All right, so here are my top 6 tips for filming emotional and story-driven interviews.
I'm excited to see Nick when I walk down the aisle. I know he's gonna cry and I'm gonna cry, and it's just gonna be a big blubbery moment, but I think that moment, you know, we've been talking about this moment, we've been looking forward to this moment, and that moment when I get to see him as my husband, it's just gonna be really special.
So the first thing is you want to find some good natural light. So a lot of times I'm filming these interviews inside, right next to a window with the overhead lights off and the nice natural light coming in. And one thing I'll do is with the bride, I want to make sure that both sides of her face are pretty evenly exposed. For the groom, I'm a little more lenient and a little more creative with letting some light fall off on one side of the face and having some contrast from one side to the other. I feel like it gives a little more of a masculine look to it, but definitely with the bride, I want to make sure that both sides of her face are pretty evenly exposed. And if you can't find any good window light, another option is heading outside, getting under some shade, and having some nice even lighting on their face. And I like to frame these up with them centered in the frame, and I like to have it pretty tight where it's going to be kind of like just above the chest, maybe just above the head. And then having it framed evenly for both lets me cut from one to the other pretty easily without having like this jointed look to it. And I feel that having it framed tight like that can carry a little more emotion to it and have a little more connection to the bride and groom as you're watching the film. And I should mention that for recording the audio for these, I use the Tascam DR10Ls, which are perfect. I just clip it on just out of frame, so you don't even see the mic, and it's going to get really good audio. So this is pretty important. Before filming the interview, you need to explain to them that you're going to remove your own voice as you're asking the questions. So they're going to need to rephrase the question in their answer. So for example, if you ask the bride, what do you admire about your groom? Then they're going to have to start off by saying, I most admire, or I most like, or I most appreciate, instead of just going right into their answer and saying, he's very kind. Because then in your video, you're just going to have her saying, he's very kind. Instead of saying, I really admire how kind he is and how he looks out for people. So that's important to remind them before the interview how that will flow. And you want to avoid making any noise during this. So for some people it's a little more difficult where you feel like you want to have some affirmative sounds like, oh yeah, yeah, as they're talking about how much they love each other. But you want to avoid that because obviously then you'll have your voice in that portion of the interview. And then I also like to give a little dead space after they give an answer where I just kind of pause right there, let the camera keep rolling before I move on to the next question. Because a lot of times in that dead space, they'll have some non-verbal emotion and expressions that are perfect. So instead of just asking the next question right after they finish, give a few seconds because sometimes they'll have a little emotion there. And I like to keep the interviews pretty brief. I have 6 questions that I go through, and I mean, in a pinch, if the schedule is getting a little crazy on the day of, I can easily whittle it down to 3 or 4 questions and really get the meat of what I need for their interview. And something that I like to do that I think couples really appreciate is I send the questions ahead of time, because for some people it's harder for them on the spot to think of answers, and then that can be kind of a stressful thing for them, knowing that, hey, the interview is coming, I don't know what the questions are going to be, I'm a little on edge now. So sending them ahead of time helps put them at ease, and it's just a good way to care for your couples. And if you'd like the exact questions that I use for emotional and story-driven interviews, you can download those through the link below. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this sets you up for success for filming interviews. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do that because I have a new video coming out each month to help you make better wedding films and serve your couples better.